Hi everybody, thank you for finding your way down here. I have to say we were slightly worried that everybody would come out of the last session and dive into lunch, and I can understand that, but we're glad that you made it down the corridor. So thank you for coming to see us. My name is Solvay and I'm the operating officer of From Another. We are the working parenthood people, and I would like to introduce you to Jess, who's our CEO, who's going to tell you all about our unique research and our findings all around flexible working. And then we're going to have a Q&A, and I'll come back to you at that point. But for now, over to you, Jess.
So as Solvay said, I'm Jess. I'm founder and CEO at From Another, the Working Parenthood people. We're here to talk about flexibility. It's a topic that's really close to my heart. I'm a military spouse and I'm a mum to two very busy boys, so it's been core to a lot of my decision making in recent years. And it's a hot topic. Put your hand up if you've had a conversation about flexible work in the last month. Keep your hand up if you've had 357 conversations about flexibility in the last month. Yep, so that's from another team, you can see. We know it's a hot topic. So as Solvay said, I'm going to talk for about 18, 20 minutes, and then we'll take your questions. We'd love to hear any stories you'd like to share about your experience of flexible work. And I'm starting to get very nervous. I didn't have a great start this morning. I got up, went to get changed to come here and impress you all, and discovered that I'd left my smart trousers in Portugal. So that wasn't a fantastic start. So we're going to talk about flexibility. I'm going to start with a bit of my story. So I'd had a 20-year career in some of the largest organisations in the world, and the last 10 of those I'd spent working with leaders and boards to drive change across the public and private sector. And the thing is, I'd always loved working. I really, really loved going to work. And my first ever job was actually organising children's parties. I was 9. So I'd always worked, and I was fiercely ambitious. And through my 20s, you could say that I worked really flexibly, in that I worked all the time. Evenings, weekends, holidays, you name it, I worked. So by the time I got to my early 30s, I had pretty much hit all of my kind of professional goals. And then you guessed it. I met a man and I fell in love, and things started to change. And then over a period of 3 years, there was a lot of change in my life. So I married a military officer. We welcomed our first child into the world, swiftly followed by our second. And we moved to Devon, which is beautiful, but about 1 million miles from anywhere. So I was one of 10 directors in my firm. I was the only one who had preschool children. And suddenly my 24 hours seemed to look really different to the people I was sat next to. So yeah, I was absolutely still the person that led on large, complex national programmes. But my evenings were no longer my own. If the children were sick, I couldn't work, and I couldn't change my schedule at short notice. But I was given a lot of support and encouragement that I could continue to progress. And actually, by the time our second child arrived, I was back at work by the time he was 3 months old. I was there 1 day a week. And then one cool September morning, I got a phone call that changed everything. And my boss called to tell me that there was going to be a lot of change at work. And most importantly, they were no longer going to be able to give me the flexibility that I needed. You have to know when it's time to go, and it was time for me to go. So I took the voluntary redundancy. I spent longer than I planned with the kids because neither of them slept. And then I started to think about what next. And in terms of what next, what I was looking for was an organisation that would let me do the work I loved and give me the confidence that I could have the flexibility that I needed. And I just couldn't find it. So if I couldn't find it, I was going to have to build it. And that's what we've done at From Another. We have normalised flexibility. For any job, we expect to adapt it in many different ways, for many different reasons, and we expect that it will change over time. So if you're the right person for the job and for the team, we sit down and we see what we can make work. It's not to say it's a free-for-all. We still have some constraints. So we don't have an office. We're entirely remote. And that works for some people and it doesn't work for others. We have core working hours of 10 till 3, Monday to Friday. And by that, we mean we don't expect you to be in a meeting outside those times. We also have a full team meeting on a Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock. So as long as you can work within those parameters, we sit down and we see what we can make work. And the really special thing about it is that that approach has enabled us to hold a place for people as the demands of their family have ebbed and flowed over time. It also means as a business, we've been able to adapt the team as the demands of the business have ebbed and flowed over time. So I'm standing here talking to you as a parent who needs flexibility and as a leader who's practicing flexibility. I'm wearing two hats. I'm guessing you do too. It's probably a lot more. So let's get back to today. So back in January, Nigel from the CCR team called me and he said, Jess, we're going to hold our first conference. It's going to be amazing. Would you come and talk about unleashing skills? And I said, yes, Nigel, we'd love to. Tell me more about who's going to be in the audience. And he said, well, they're innovative, ambitious, scaling businesses. Some of those in here. So we went out and we talked to leaders of ambitious, scaling businesses. We talked to angel investors. We talked to VCs. And it was clear that in terms of skills, talent, and people, the story that you can tell around that is only becoming more important for your business. So we sat down, and the thing that kept coming up was flexibility. Time and time again, people were talking to us about flexibility and what it could mean for their business. So as a team, we sat down and we started where we always start, with what the research already tells us. Quite frankly, there's no point in us replicating what we already know. We will look for the questions that haven't been answered yet so that we can bring you new data and new insights. So I turned to Jade, Dr. Richards, our amazing head of research, an in-house anthropologist, and I said, Jade, what can you tell me about flexibility? And she said, well, Jess, changes in technology and expectations are fueling demand for flexibility. 60% of employees prioritise flexibility over salary. And we're starting to see that in some sectors, if you can't offer flexibility in a role, you're having to offer 20% more salary. 76% of managers say that flexibility generally improves productivity. And organisations benefit from bottom line savings because you improve productivity, you improve retention, and you also reduce inflationary wage pressure. So we know it can be good for organisations. We know it can be good for people in organisations. But it's not simple, she said. She said flexibility is a paradox. So for every benefit, there's a potential disbenefit. So an individual might save time commuting, but they could become more isolated. A team can work asynchronously, but they lose opportunities for collaboration. It can reduce barriers to employment, but it can also embed existing inequity. And the thing is, Jess, she said, the thing is, the research doesn't tell us yet what you can do in an organisation to tip the balance in favour of the benefits. Aha, I said, we've got our first question. What can you do in organisations to tip the balance in favour of the benefits of flexible work? And I said, but hang on, Jade, we keep talking about flexible work and the research keeps referring to flexible work. What do we actually mean by flexible work? And she said, well, generally, flexible work is defined as an adaptation to the time and place in which work is carried out. And the government has a useful list online for us. And here it is. And I looked at the list and I thought back to my time when I had been looking for a place where I could do the work I loved and be confident I would have the flexibility I needed. And it wasn't described here. So I said to Jade, do you know what, Jade? I think we need to go back to basics. I think we really need to understand what people mean when they talk about flexible work. So we had our second question. 2 questions, so we ran a listening programme. Now, research is at the heart of what we do at From Another. Our listening programmes enable us to listen, to hear from parents and managers from all sorts of organisations and sectors. And that's really important because if we're going to develop the solutions that parents and managers need in your organisation, we've really got to get under the skin of what they want, what they mean, and what they experience. So over the last 10 weeks, we have heard from hundreds of parents and managers. We've used surveys, we've used one-to-one conversations, we've actually spent over 110 hours just listening. And we're able to answer our 2 questions. And there were some things that surprised us, and I'll share one of those with you today as well. So our first question is, what can you do in an organisation to really harness that, to tip the balance in favour of the benefits? The single most important thing you can do in an organisation is role modelling. And why should this surprise us? We know that do as I say, not as I do, just doesn't work. We know from our time at home, who here has sat down with the kids to have the conversation about you're using your mobile phone too much, for them to just turn around and point the finger straight back at you? And it's no different at work. When we divided the data into people who reported positive experiences of flexible work and people who reported negative experiences, the people who reported positive experiences, they all referred to someone else showing them how it was done. They had someone showing them the ways in which they could incorporate flexibility into their lives. So let's have a quick chat about organisational structure. This is the most boring slide, but I was going to try and do it with my fingers and it all got a bit complicated. So most organisations look like this. We've got the pointy bit at the top where the leadership sit. We tend to have management in the middle, and then we have everyone else. If your organisation looks radically different to this, I'd love to have a conversation later and find out what you're doing. But let's stick with this for now. If you're in the layer of everyone else, you're looking up to see what management are doing. If you're in the layer of management in the middle, you're looking up to see what your leadership are doing. So what does this mean in terms of power and influence in an organisation? Who are the most powerful and influential people or person in your organisation? Yeah. They're sitting there in the pointy bit at the top. Now, you're going to be sitting here and you're going to be picturing who that person or who those people are, or it might be you, and you're going to be thinking, oh, this is going to be all right, or you're going to be sitting there thinking, oh no, because yes, the role modelling has got to start at the top. You can change all your policies. You can invest in training. You can make sure everybody gets access to parental leave. But if the person sitting up the top makes it clear they don't need to combine work with other priorities in their life, then you're going to have a harder road ahead. So dig into your role modelling, get the support in place to enable people to do that well. You might be asking someone to change the habits of, if not a lifetime, then probably a career. And that can be a huge ask of an individual. But it could benefit every person in your organisation. So, the thing you can do in your organisation is role modelling, and our second question was, what do people mean when they talk about flexible work? So, we took all of our data, thousands of sentences, and we analysed them to interrogate what people mean when they talk about flexible work. And what we learnt is this. Flexibility isn't about time and place. Flexibility is about trust. When someone comes to you to say, can I change the way in which I do my job? What they're actually asking is, do you trust me to do my job? Do you trust me to add value in this organisation? And if you say to them, no, you can't change the way that you do your job, what they actually hear is, no, I don't trust you. And again, why are we surprised when our children come to us wanting to do things differently? They want to chop the apple by themselves. They want to walk to their friend's house on their own. They want to stay at the party until midnight. As they push against those boundaries that we've been comfortable with, we might say no. And we might say no because we feel it's not appropriate, or we might feel they're not ready yet, or quite frankly, we might not have time that day to sit down and think about it. So we say no, and they turn around and they say, don't you trust me? And it's no different at work. At home and at work, when we invest in trust, we make people feel safe. And when we make people feel safe, they will make themselves vulnerable. And when someone makes themselves vulnerable, they connect. And when we connect, we build trust. Now, being safe and being vulnerable can be really hard things to do in organisations. But it all starts with trust. And every conversation you have about flexible work is an opportunity to build trust. It's an opportunity to talk about, where does the comfortable boundary sit? What could it look like in the future? How could it change over time? So every conversation you have about flexible work isn't just an opportunity to change the way people do their work in your organisation. It's an opportunity to change how people feel. And if you can tap into how people feel, you can supercharge your greatest asset, you can minimise your productivity gap, and you can make your business the best it can be. So, on to the thing that surprised us. So I'm going to talk to you about Ram, not his real name. We had a conversation with Ram as part of our listening programme, and I'm going to share some of his story with you today. Ram works in banking. He is father to 2 beautiful children, and his wife works full-time. He wanted to be around with the kids before and after school, so he reduced his working week from 40 hours to 34, a 15% reduction. He took a 15% pay cut, and he was demoted from senior manager to manager. What does Ram say about this? He says, the only annoying part as a working parent is if you have aspirations to progress, your career is on hold because flexible hours don't allow you to do a bigger role. So that's the only annoyance I have with it. Yes, there is a negative in terms of career progression, but it's outweighed by the benefits of being there with your kids. And what does being there with his kids mean to Ram? He says, the reason I'm comfortable with this, and I'm very clear on this, is you have a window when your child wants to hold your hand. We hold hands on the way to school. We have a kiss at the playground. These are nice moments as a parent, but they won't want to do it forever. So I'm very, very clear in my mind that success for me is maximising my time with my kids whilst maintaining my career. Now, is this a problem? Because quite frankly, Ram sounds okay about the arrangements he's got and the choices he's had to make. And you might be sitting there thinking, well, come on, Jess, what do you expect? His priorities have changed. This is madness. And what is even more bewildering is that time and time again, parents told us that they accept the stagnation or the rolling back of their career as the price they are willing to pay to hold their child's hand. When we enable people to accommodate most of the needs of their family alongside the needs of their job, because we haven't normalised flexibility, they can be so damn grateful that they are able to continue to work and feel like a competent parent, that they will take almost any deal you give them to hold on to enough of their career whilst holding on to their child's hand. Holding on to their child's hand is so important to them, they will take the pay cut. Holding on to their child's hand is so important to them, they will take the demotion. Holding on to their child's hand is so important to them because they know the time to hold their child's hand is now. Is this a problem? Because it doesn't seem to be a problem for Ram, but it's a problem for his organisation. Because at some point, someone in Ram's organisation spent quite a lot of money trying to find him. And they welcomed him in because they thought he was great. And they spent more time, more money, training him up, developing him, promoting him. And then for some reason, the fact that he stepped up and said, I can no longer guarantee I can be in a meeting between 3 and 5 o'clock, for some reason that meant more than everything else that had been invested in him so far. So maybe it's not a problem for Ram, but we need to think about this as organisations. We need to think about what's the world that we want to live in. So you need to be looking at role modelling. How's that taking place in your organisation? We need to be thinking about trust. How are we building trust? And we need to be looking at whether people in your organisation are progressing whilst they hold their child's hand. Otherwise, we could face the greatest paradox of all as we enable people to be the parents they want to be and deny ourselves access to all the talent that they have. So if this has resonated with you, let's talk. Let's normalise flexibility. Let's make this a world where our children cannot believe what we used to do. Diolch. It's all right.
I don't know about you, but for me, the first time I heard it, and it was over a Teams call with the team, and Jess said, "Oh, I'll give you a run through," and we were like, "Yeah, here we go." And I thought to myself immediately as she was talking, I thought, did I sacrifice those moments for work in my city job and building businesses and all the rest of it? Did I do that? Was that the expense I did to continue my career? Did I miss those moments? And I thought about it, and I thought there has to be a better way. And of course, that's what we're all about, and that's why I'm part of this organisation too, because it doesn't work for the child, and it doesn't work for the parent, and it doesn't work for the employer. And I think the missing part has been the fact that it doesn't work for the employer, because the employer's thinking, well, it's not my child. But at the end of the day, if you have parents who are resentful and who feel they've missed out, this leads to a lack of engagement and reduced productivity. And we know it doesn't have to be that way. So we'd really like to open the conversation out to all of you. And if you can let me know who you are and where you're from, and we'll have a really open Q&A session. But thank you so much, Jess, for introducing us to this. First question. Hello.
My name's Alistair. I run a public relations company in Cardiff. This obviously resonates a lot, particularly the last 3 years with hybrid working online. I'm the boss and the owner of the founding sector, so tracking productivity is massive and very important. Obviously, if you're not productive, you're not having a business. But I employ around 10, 11 people on a good day. Okay, I've been doing it for 19 years. I'm very, very lucky at the moment. I trust every single member of that team. That's not always been the case. So I'm interested around your thoughts around the trust element, because obviously the team will change at some point. And I don't know where they are at the moment, but I trust them that they'll do whatever they do. So I was interested around the trust and what thoughts you might have on that.
Jess, do you want to
Great.
answer that one?
Thanks, Alistair. Can I do that really irritating thing and play it back to you? So the thing I'd love to know is, so when you haven't trusted a member of your team, what's that led to? Can you describe that experience for us?
No, it just breaks down in all those sort of relationships.
Yeah.
And especially now, I'm sure, with a lot of hybrid working, etc. You think, well, are they working, or are they going to have their nails done, or is it going down the pub, etc. So it just leads for me to a very rapid deterioration in that relationship. So I like to think, I don't run my business for profit. I like to run business to be successful, to give people a really great experience. I've got a lot of young parents in my business. So long that, the more that goes on, the better. I'm doing my best to be a good boss, but there is that trust which interests me.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. I think there is nothing worse than having somebody in your team that you don't trust. I think the thing you need to look at is, why is it that you don't trust them? Is it, is that based on facts and evidence and experience? Is it because actually, and I think this is one of the challenges of remote working, is that it can take time. You need to build trust in different ways. You need to build relationships in different ways. But we hear from managers who have people in their teams that they don't trust, and it's very difficult for them to move them out of their team. And so we need to be looking at these corrective systems and structures that we have in organisations, because actually if we really want to dig into the trust and we really want to build on the trust, we've got to have the conversation about what do we do with the people that we don't trust. And we have to acknowledge that they are there. We have to acknowledge that that is a natural part of building relationships and running a team effectively. So I don't think there's any easy answer to it, Alistair, but I think we've at least got to start having the conversation and acknowledging that that is what happens in teams, and that's what can happen between managers and parents. So thanks for bringing it up.
Yes. Would you like to answer?
My name is Manuel Solomon. I live in Cardiff in the Southern Enterprise Forum. Literally one of the chat really from me not being able to work for civil organisations about flexible work, particularly through the lens of risk and resilience, the job of quite like the platform a lot of the time. Because the end also needs space. The issue around flexible working, especially like I said through the lens of race and religion, and like prayer times and having time off for like religious festivals like Eid, which is extremely important for a lot of people. So I've worked for organisations before where, you know, as a Muslim person, I pray 5 times a day. So it's been a bit of a burden on the organisation, and it's made me not want to work and not feel safe, and you know, not having the privilege to actually take my full self to work. And when people say I have the privilege, you know, my privilege to actually go to work, you know, does it full self or no? I can't bring my full self to work, so it's actually put me at risk in my life and doing that. Yeah, I just wanted to put my 2 pence on that, and like, especially like I said, to, you know, everyone wants to be inclusive. That's one of these buzzwords: inclusion, diversity, equality, you know, all that sort of stuff. So I work for myself for that exact reason, and a lot of people like myself are doing that now because of these barriers. So I wanted to know, like, did you have an angle as part of your research which focus on that? How important was your representative of the issues around race and religion, particularly around race?
Yeah, absolutely. So great, really great question. Thank you. So from another, we launched in May of last year, and we're really thrilled with our flexible work listening programme, but we are not as inclusive as we want to be at the moment. So we don't have a large enough sample size to say that we are reflective across different races and religions within the UK. What we are doing is, over the next 3 years, is we're building the most inclusive listening programme for parents and managers in the UK for precisely this reason, because we want to be able to create the space to enable different sides and different facets of these intersectional issues that we're facing, so that we can bring those stories and we can build the confidence and the capabilities and the mindsets that people need to be able to engage with them well. So thank you for sharing that with us. Sally, I'll come to you in 1 second, but I'd really love to also hear from you when you have then found yourself in a place where you can bring your full self to work. How would you describe that?
Share assets and talents. But right now, I've worked with so it's important to be much yourself, feel comfortable, stay as a when you talk there, I felt like good and also with the territory. But I haven't felt safe, but I feel safe now because I'm able to set my own boundaries and, you know, people are really invested in my values and my religion and things like that. So, yeah, I feel like there's organisations like this, you really want to represent the work, what you should be doing, be inclusive. You make yourself comfortable, you're totally honest with the fact that everyone's representing the work together, so many buzzwords out there. Again, so triggering, like really what you actually do actively, being a compass, not an ally, you've been in a compass, actively make change in the organisation, you're constantly affecting, there's so many people. I feel like within Wales, there's so much like an answer is to ask them, how is that kind of work for you, for example, to really make sure people feel comfortable in work. And just bring the most and be really, it's a benefit in both ways, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. It would be great to have a conversation later about how we might be able to work on the expansion of the listening programme. But again, I think we need to acknowledge that these things, if we're doing them, they're going to make us uncomfortable. They're going to push us into new conversations that we might not want to have, just as we have to acknowledge that we're not always going to trust every single member of our team. Sally?
It's great to build something. I think it's quite interesting, isn't it? It's not just about aim, it's about stage, it's about situation. That's going to extend beyond just having kids. It's a lot of parents, it's going through grief, it's menopausal. It's, you know, it's all the above. I'd be really interested to see how, you know, sort of from another, you know, sort of build to that. I think it's, you know, so much of, you know, obviously sensitivity, religion, all those things. So, you know, a lot of what we've heard today is obviously relevant to being a parent. I've built that myself, and I think there's really more you said earlier as well, isn't it? About, you know, don't you have to be very clear about the kind of deliverables? So if there is a trust issue and people are withdrawing in terms of maybe working less or working in a different way, isn't it then isn't it even more about communication? It's sort of setting really clear targets, because at the end of the day, if someone does decide to go to the park or whatever, as long as the job gets done and you feel like the work has been achieved and delivered, then, you know, everyone's happy at that point. So it's really interesting, sort of discussion.
I think also the angle that we're coming from is that although we focus particularly on working parents, it's flexibility for whatever needs you might have. And actually, in the workforce going forward, I think individuals don't always have to have somebody that they need to look after in order to need some flexibility. Yeah, and it can be for the reasons that you were discussing very eloquently, but it can be for other reasons that you might want that flexibility. And at the end of the day, what we are trying to uncover are the ways that organisations and individuals can work together. So it's not about a them and us. It's not about the employee saying, we need this, and the employer going, oh my God, how on earth are we going to deliver that? And what's going to happen to our business? It's about saying, look, we've really researched all of these points. These are the things that really matter to the person needing flexibility. And these are the tools that we can help you with as an organisation or a manager to facilitate you being able to offer those things in order that your productivity is maintained, and also that the managers and the organisations have the confidence around it. Because, of course, each individual within an organisation who's responsible for people also has their own goals and targets and pressures above them, and flexibility isn't going away. So it's something we need to work out and get it right. And also understand the challenges for each person involved in the world of flexibility, because it is tough. I give an example, for example, of a professional services firm. You'll have a manager who's responsible, or a partner who's responsible for their team, and the way they're judged by that triangle at the top is on billings, outcomes and what have you. And it's very hard for them to let go of the traditional structure because of a fear that they themselves won't progress. But research shows us that productivity and engagement increases as you give trust and flexibility. And it's what our tools that we have developed and our courses to help organisations and individuals be able to benefit from all of this research, and also our coaching services and other things that we're bringing forward, and really looking to how can we make it easier for everybody to get what they need, because it shouldn't be that you hide your need for flexibility. It should be something that you can openly discuss, and that there are methods and ways of working that actually make it work. But at the same time, systems for organisations to be able to measure that productivity, because at the end of the day, the money to pay for wages and what have you doesn't come from the ether. So you have to look at all sides of the coin. And I think a lot of the conversation at the moment has been banging on the door saying, we need this, we need that, we need flexibility. And that is absolutely right, you do. However, we need to make sure it works in the real world. And that's what our research and our solutions are all about. Brilliant. Next question, yes?
Yeah, just wanted to sort of ask, this sort of framework out there earlier, which was, resonates from, Gareth Brown's ECR. The sort of framework that I'm sort of used to seeing in government, where we show compressed hours and flexi time and all these things. And, going back 17 years ago when my first son was born, I took the step to do compressed work, and so I just like Monday, Tuesday, take Wednesday off, Thursday, Friday. And what happened was I ended up doing a lot more on Wednesday night. That's a side story. But at that point, 17 years ago, that was quite a unusual thing for someone to do. Government to take time, and spend time with the child. I didn't do it my second son, just but a different time and place. But it really had, But I think what governments are good at doing, we put those frameworks together and say, right, we've got flexible policy. Do you in your research feel that helps or hinders? Should we be more generic or broad in terms of look at that framework? Does the framework actually pose a problem in itself? So should we be using, why not allow people working in government to work so many hours a week? Should we be counting hours? Is it more productivity? I think, I don't know if it's a question we really answer, but that framework in itself, for me, feels like the sort of barriers that makes things artificially so tries to how we operate.
I couldn't agree more, Gareth. I mean, what the lists do is they give us buckets and they say you need to fit into this bucket or you need to fit into this bucket. And I mean, if anyone here has a bucket-shaped life, then great. But mine isn't. The needs of my family. Can I take this off? This is just really awful. The needs of my family ebb and flow, but also the needs of my job ebb and flow. And so, it works both ways. So I think you're right. I think we have got into a mindset of, right, okay, so to respond to this demand, we need to set out the options for people, and it's A, C or D. Whereas actually what I think we need is we need fluidity. We need it to be dynamic. We need it to be adaptable, rather than you just get to a point and that's the right answer for you, because our lives always change, businesses always change. The other thing, which I think doesn't help, is that actually the web page before that list of things, what the government says is that flexible work is there to accommodate the needs of the employee, and it doesn't talk about the employer. And so we are just setting people up with an expectation that that is what they need to come in and have a conversation about, when of course we've got to hold two things, we've got to hold both of those needs, and what we're looking for is that we can hold them in more equal balance. And of course there will be times when our needs at home take priority and kids are sick and we need to be there, or there's a whole host of reasons why I need to be there, but equally the business might need more from us at points in time. And so it has to be fluid, it has to be dynamic. We can't just create buckets for people and say, right, well, we've worked out that that's the right bucket for you, and expect that that's going to solve the problem. So great question, Gareth, thank you.
Hi, I'm James, Dorog Talent. So I was just really interested in, and thanks for sharing the research, and in particular that the importance of role modelling, and I guess from personal experience, when you work, if your boss is putting those hours in and working like a dog, it's very hard to not follow that example, or feel if you're not following that example that you're not contributing. And I guess I see it possibly almost being cyclical as well, as obviously the people who put the hours in and more likely to get promoted, and then you're going to create a culture where the people at the top, to even get to the top, need to be a certain way. And I guess, really, I'm interested that you've shared the problem, and I guess really interested to know what you finding in terms of the solutions, like how do you break that cycle, or how do you create a culture with the people on the top, particularly to even get there, don't need to work in an inflexible way, so that the next people can to follow that example. That I guess, a bit more about the solutions I'm interested to hear about, if you...
Great. Yeah, I'll put it up. Do you want me to cover this?
So, as I've said, we're all about making it work for everybody, because if you help the individual to understand how they can make flexibility work for themselves, but you haven't worked with the organisation, then you don't get anywhere. And if you do the other way around, you also don't get anywhere. So the listening programme stories, so the listening programme we've done is where we have got all of this knowledge and data, and the basis upon which we are creating our course that's going to start in September, called the Research course. It runs for 6 weeks, and the idea of that is that employees can engage in that course, and it will help them through all the learnings we've had to understand how flexibility needs to work within the workplace, not just for them, but also for the employer. How do we make this work? And on the other side of the coin, the Navigator programme. So what we're doing there is upskilling managers and organisations to also understand our research and where it's coming from, and the two work side by side, so that when, after both of the programmes have been completed, then everybody is on the same sheet about how we're going to make this, how we're actually going to make it work, and to give organisations and managers really the confidence to give that trust and that autonomy, which is quite scary to give. I run my own business too, and I know it is, and I know it's scary, and you think, what's everybody doing when you're not here? But also looking to the future, developing tools to be able to evaluate what's going on, and a tech product in the future involved with software, which will help to organisations and individuals to feel happy with what the new status quo. So it's normalising flexibility, and it's using our data and research to show it's not just what we think might be a good way for managers to look at this and employees to look at this, it's what they have told us they need to understand. And at the moment,
individuals are accepting flexibility at the expense of progression and at the expense of pay, and ultimately that does not help a happy organisation to build. And organisations themselves, just as you said, have a framework for flexibility. It's not new and it's not going to go away, but that framework is there, and quite understandably you had to start somewhere. So, you know, that's not a criticism, it's just that that was the only place to start, and nobody's actually asked the questions before now. No one has spent hours interviewing individuals to find out how it is as a manager, what's the challenge, how it is as an employee. And we really, you know, got down to the fact that it's being able to give that trust and autonomy to allow somebody to be effectively productivity driven. So, you know, if they do their job well, does it really matter if they do it from Timbuktu while scratching their head? No, not really. But, you know, clearly organisations have other obligations, but it's trying to bring all that together in the two programmes. So the reset starting September, and as I say, that's for the individuals themselves, for the employees, and the Navigator programme also starting. We're going to run that, I think it's twice.
Yep, twice a year.
And that will be to help employers and managers to really be able to embrace the value of the reset programme. So they work side by side, and on top of that, we also are doing coaching individual and group, because sometimes there's something different within an organisation that just needs unlocking, and beneath that also, and within that, more specialised accounting as well. As I say, the software coming in the future. Hello?
I'm Steve. I'm project manager for a construction company. Also your business as well, to really go together, which is what we're discovering. Because I've got the opposite issue of our staff working too much because they have to, because we're on site, so therefore you have to be there, therefore you have to travel to and from there, and we often have to work in shutdown periods or other clients because we work in tech environments, so we have to go in and work when they're not in production, so they get to the rest of the time. So we have staff who will be working 60 to 80 hours a week in peaks and troughs. Construction is also peaks and troughs. And we're trying to listen to the EOs, and they're coming up with what we want to have a official flexi time. So if I'm working 80 hours for the last 2 months, then obviously I won't be able to take off 3 weeks in the future. It doesn't go off my leave. And the company says, well, we can't account for that because we can't have people disappearing for 3 months, 3 weeks, because they've worked hard previously. So we're trying to figure out how we give these people flexibility in the opposite direction, i.e. not that they're working less, but how we deal with them working
Too much.
more than they should be. So does that think about?
And that's a really good example of a scenario where sort of traditional offering flexibility and, you know, getting on your screen for a bit from home, you know, that's not going to be enough. That doesn't work. So in terms of individual scenarios like that, we offer also consultancy to have a look at that, just to have a look and see where you're at, and you know where we could fit our programs into, but also to work out what the questions are that need answering. So it might be that there are solutions there that might actually be driven by the employees themselves. There may be something within asking them and speaking to them in a listening program that's bespoke, a shorter one, a smaller number of people, to actually work out what's going on. Because I think, like anything, and what we're trying to get away from is us saying that's the only solution to the problem, because we've learned that from the people we've already spoken to, even though maybe that isn't exactly relevant to what you're doing. We need to ask the questions first. We need to get the information first from the managers and from the individuals themselves, and then we can work something through to see what might work for your organisation. But again, it's trying to avoid putting another cookie cutter in the same place all the time, because that's what we've learned doesn't work for the long term.
Yeah, we've done our own canvassing.
Yeah.
The suggestion points. And because we have staff who work normal office hours, then we have design consultancy staff who work slightly longer hours, and then we have site-based staff who work together. We have 3 streams of flexibility that people are looking for. And the one that keeps coming up over and over again is a official flexi time. The hours you book is get time off and leave for it. That's everybody's question. That is very resistant to that because we can't manage the amount of time people will take off in the future. So we're just wrestling with whether or not the official flexi time booking system time is something that we can function. You know, like is flexi time officially a good thing, or is it problematic? I'm sure the answer will be a bit of both.
You're absolutely right, of course it is. So, first of all, I'd be really happy to jump on a call and we can talk through what you've done and what might help. I think the thing to remember, we talked about trust and feeling safe and being vulnerable. And when people don't feel safe and they feel vulnerable, the thing that they look for is certainty. And my hypothesis is that in organisations where people perhaps don't feel as safe as they might like to, what they look for is certainty. And so if we had the certainty of now we know we've got a system where I can count my hours, then I know that I'm safe here. So I think what would be really interesting is to look at what's potentially driving that, actually how do people feel in your organisation? Why is it that they're coming to you and saying, this is going to fix the problem for me? Because I'll be really honest, I'm not convinced it will fix the problem for them. But why is it that that feels like the solution that will work for them? So,
yeah, feedback from that is at the minute it's discretion. The manager is taking final goodness and for that, and it's kind of in hand feeling. Feels like I've got permission to do it, and you're not master of your own.
yeah,
You're not autonomous of your own time.
yeah,
That's what people say. That, well, I know that I've got these 2 hours, so I don't have to come and ask you what's wrong. So I'm going to would like. It's the autonomy, manage their own time.
and we heard this time and time again through the listening programme, that parents want autonomy and managers want predictability. And how do you marry those two things together? What's the middle path that we can find to balance both of those demands? So I'm sorry, I don't have a quick, easy answer for you, but it would be really fantastic to talk it through if you had the time.
Thank you so much for coming back with questions and thoughts, because it isn't noted properly. But it is something I think that we can get right, actually. And like anything in life, if you ask people what they really feel on both sides of the coin, you can come up with some really good solutions, and we hope we've done that. So thank you very much.